All right, welcome everybody. We are super excited to get started with you today, and we have tons of material that we need to get through in a very short period of time. We figured though, as CS professionals, why not just kick things off with a poll to get things started and better understand where you're all at in your CS journey as you operate as a profit center. We're looking to just make sure that we're engaged and getting the right material to you and making sure that this is as interactive as possible. We have the chat in there that you can ask questions as we go through things, and we're going to leave some time towards the end for you to ask any questions that you need to do as well. So just as you're funneling in, go ahead and enter in your response on that poll there, and we will get started. Again, welcome just to Big Rig 2021. We're super excited to be here and sharing our session with you today, which is Customer Success as a Profit Center. I'm Matt Brown. I'm the Director of Customer Enablement here at Solink. I'm also joined by two awesome other individuals, Parul Bhandari from Aclaimant and Dave Epperly from Red Canary. And we're really excited to focus in on a session that I think we're all, as we found out, getting to know each other, pretty interested in and very passionate about it as well. So some of our objectives today as we carry our way through today's session is just to share with you around some ideas of how you can set up your team for success in operating as a profit center internally. So as we know, customer success is a really large opportunity in B2B companies and B2C as well. But with some correct leadership, positioning, and execution, CS can turn what might be seen as a cost center into something that's a very highly efficient profit center. So we're hoping to let you walk away today with something that you can implement in your day-to-day, and that is for you to position yourself a little bit stronger within your organization as that profit center. And then as well as just how you can start to kind of turn up the notch and pull on different levers to add exponential growth and not just incremental. As well as really how to focus on your people, implement some tools and practices that you could use today and help kind of increase that revenue as a team as well. So it looks like everybody, the poll is closing, but I'm just kind of taking a quick look at the results there. And about 33% of you are saying, hey, we've made some progress, but we need to work on the approach maybe a little bit more. Some people are just getting started. So I'm really excited because that's kind of how we've probably set this up to really go over some of these different pieces as well. And again, my position on this as well, and kind of my 2 cents is I've been in previous roles on the sales side, really focused on kind of adding that top line growth. And in the B2B world and in the CS world, you're seen as something that every SaaS company needs. But when you're seen as something that every SaaS company needs, you also end up being just kind of a throw in to protect the bottom line. I don't see it that way. I see it as customer success as the most cost-efficient way, in fact, to actually increase your annual recurring revenue. So anybody that's building a CS organization, either from the bottom or as a seasoned vet, you got to really position yourself as that profit center. As we know, cost centers are always kind of facing that scrutiny of cost cutting. You see this where kind of CS individuals are sometimes earned, where salespeople are given. And when you really look at this, you can start to have a higher visibility into the impact of the business that you can make. So if you're operating CS as a business, start to think bigger and outside the box. As a team, we can elevate the conversations we're having at that upper management level and become more strategic department and not just a tactical item that is there to protect that bottom line. So kind of my position on things as well, and we're going to get to Dave and Parul, but is really your metrics matter and how you position those metrics. And that's what I mean by thinking outside the box is what you're reporting and measuring and kind of displaying to your upper management, your upper leadership teams, your board really does make a difference. And these are all good things that every team needs to be obviously aware of. Your NPS scores, your CSATs, your churn rates, renewal rates, all these things are really, really important as a team. But as you start to evolve the conversation as a profit center and as a business center that adds that exponential value, you want to get into more conversations around that customer lifetime value. How can you impact that? What I really like to look at, and I'm going to spend some time here, is the tactical outcomes or those kind of impact-based metrics that you can pull on, how X impacts Y, as I like to look at it. And then your health scores as well. So obviously these are important. Churn zero, I rely on them every day to help with this for sure. And I know my team does as well. And they point me in the direction of, are we looking to add or retain and everything like that. But really what this conversation today is going to be about is how can you start to position yourself for these best types of metrics that add you into those conversations for developing your team as a profit center. So focusing on revenue forecasting, some gross revenue retention, your net revenue retention, and then my new favorite metric, which is an earned growth rate or ratio. And there's a great article on HBR. I encourage everybody to read that at another time for sure. And so when I'm looking at all these different things, I start to kind of evaluate them and look at them as like, these are all actually lagging indicators. They're all the things that you report, but how do you get from kind of lagging to leading or leading to lagging? And so it's something that I kind of lean on every day as those tactical outcome-based metrics and how X impacts Y. And what I mean by that is exactly this. So if you're determining and looking at each one of these, how do we impact that expansion rate? How do we impact the retention or the gross renewal rate, our CSATs? All those things are in fact lagging indicators. But determining what actions you can do or your team can do, you can lead your team through, can really contribute or influence to those, and then starting to pull on those different levers as you kind of manage a customer through their life cycle journey. So breaking down these at different kind of key impact times for your customer journey is going to give you the best results in these. So start thinking them kind of the mindset of what actions does your team take to increase maybe implementation satisfaction scores, or what action can your team do to increase kind of product engagement, get that depth of the product. And when that happens, are we more likely to see a renewal rate? Are we going to see that expansion happen faster, get them to value faster? All of these questions and all of these types of like conversion rates, if you will, start to pay off in the long run as you get to the ability to project and look for kind of that additional revenue down the line. And we're all pretty familiar with this. I just use the term conversion rate, looking at kind of, going from those leading indicators of forecasting and everything like this. This is your traditional sales funnel, going through awareness, through leads, your marketing qualified, sales qualified, and opportunities, is what's happening at each stage of this through your customer. And this is obviously the traditional sales funnel where at the end of the day, you're looking for that dollar sign. We're getting more into the weeds where you're flipping this onto its side and then kind of duplicating this. And I love this. Here's from Winning by Design. This is something I look at and reference quite often is, when you duplicate that sales funnel, it's only growing near the end. And when your sales funnel ends at the commit line, that's when the CS team starts to lean into how can we start to forecast for earned growth. So each one of these CR, CR1, CR2, these are all conversion rates. We're looking at what lever can I pull on the onboarding spectrum, on that type of going live into that recurring model of growing that out. And when you start to lean on that, you're able to develop and say, okay, we're starting to go down this path where if I do more trainings, one-on-ones for a high touch customer, we can start to, maybe build out that sales funnel going the other way and working through that time to value. And so as you start to do that, getting into the forecasting, adding percentages of likelihoods, all these different things. It doesn't happen overnight, but I think it's one of those things that, you start to play with, you start to tweak these numbers and what those percentage rates mean based off of each and every action that your team goes through. So, Parul, I know you've got some really good material on here as well. I'm just going to take a quick peek into that. And as we do go through things, anybody that's got questions, feel free to ask them in the chat. We're going to save some. If there's any that's like really relevant to what we're chatting about, we'll answer them on the fly. If there's time at the end, which we're hoping to do, we're going to answer them as well. But Parul, I'll throw it over to you just to get maybe some of your opinion on how do you set up a CS team as a profit center.
Yeah. Hey, thanks, Matt. Parul Bhandari here, Director of Customer Success for Aclaimant. I'm actually a 2-time Churn Zero buyer, and I'm really excited to be implementing Churn Zero for the second time right now with my team. So going through this journey all over again, which is fantastic, and seeing some of the great new content. So I'm going to just kick off here with my 2 cents. And this is I'm really big into analogies and things, so you guys will get that. You'll get that drift here. So I kind of call it like customer success is your bank, right? You put money into the bank, you really don't want to see that deposit dwindle, right? You want to make sure that that deposit at least is maintained at the pretty low interest rates that we have today, at least is maintained, or grows, right? And you want to see those returns on that. When I actually started my customer success journey, I joined, just like many SaaS startups, a team that was essentially selling software and then kind of leaving it there for the customers to fend for themselves. And what you realize with that is, you don't really know what's going on. You're not really ensuring the health and the growth of that investment, right? And we did have a little bit of churn. Luckily, we didn't lose too many customers at that period, but we just realized, like, wow, you really do need an active engagement to keep that deposit maintained and growing. So that's kind of my quick analogy on like a customer success team at a company, and how you can sort of start to leverage the activities that you do. So kind of two things that come up quite often. I think I happen to be working at a startup, which is a great place to be when you're wanting to answer some of these big questions. So, one of the questions that comes up often is to renew or not to renew, right? I always say this is a question, and I hear it often discussed and debated amongst different CS leadership. And I'll tell you, I don't think that it's necessarily an easy and a straightforward answer. My answer is it really does depend. Should CS be your renewal machine, or should you have a separate team or even your sales team involved? I will say it's not necessarily right for every sales model. And I kind of push it back to the sales team on this, because I've worked with different types of sales teams. If you have a hands-off sales team, like they sell and then they're willing to kind of let it go, that's usually a good indicator of where your customer experience or customer success team can come in and really be that end-to-end support. If you have CSMs who can adapt to manage commercial tasks, right, that is actually a skill set of its own, which we often overlook, right, in our hiring process. We maybe don't call out those line items. And then last but not least, do you have a great pricing strategy? And I can tell you, most growth stage companies or early stage companies probably don't have a great pricing strategy. You probably build your contracts on the fly. But a great pricing strategy is actually the backbone to a really great renewals process. If you have defined SKUs and logical pricing, and you can actually every kind of renewal cycle define how and when you're going to renew, that is really the key to that kind of onward success of your CS team doing renewals. So that's kind of my little quick take on renewals. The other area I wanted to touch on is expansion or upsells. And I think we all know this, but upsells do not happen by accident. There are a few times that customers will absolutely need something and it will sell itself, right? And you might have a product that's like that, or have a service offering that's like that. That's great if you do. For the most part, it's not gonna come out of the thin air. So kind of my thoughts here on this one is, do you have really good customer content? I know we invest a lot of money in marketing teams to make sure that everybody in the market knows what our product does and it's awesome. But do we invest in really good customer marketing? And I say thank you to Churn Zero, because I'll be honest, in my last company, I think I sent millions of messages using Churn Zero in our very specialized, very focused customer marketing campaigns. It wasn't marketing though. It was just telling customers what we did, right? Like, hey, we released something awesome, and using the awesome platform that Churn Zero has to actually deliver that made our lives very easy, made it seamless, gave us great data. So that's why I really think customer content is important. Whether you do a webinar, whether you do, a newsletter, whatever it is, make sure you invest in that, because that is going to help to grow the business. Business reviews, as we all know, are so valuable for those great discussions, but do you also use that platform to understand what is driving your customers, right? Goals to outcomes. We hear this all the time in CS today, but do you really have defined goals and defined outcomes that can clearly be indicators of what might drive future forecasting, as Matt was pointing out, right? And then last but not least, farming. So upsells do not sell themselves. When somebody asks for something and you just leave it to sit there, it's not likely going to sell. So are you really ready to sort of take that on in your organization? So thinking about those farming elements and how you want to execute. So anyways, little bit of an overview here for me. Sorry, Matt.
I was just going to lean into that a little bit. I mean, I think there's some teams here that are, and CS leaders that have, kind of a foundation around what they're hoping to achieve in terms of their, their targets and stuff like that. But there's probably a good group of people that don't necessarily have like a direct revenue responsibility as a CS team. Like, do you think having direct responsibility as a CS team or those types of targets are needed to be able to, like, establish yourself as a profit center? Or what's your thoughts on that?
I mean, yes and no. So I feel like more and more you're seeing it lean towards yes, right? And more organizations, kind of to your point, we're trying to scale, we're trying to do more with less. And really, as a CSM, you have to expand your skill set if you want to stay relevant. But it might not be the right fit for every company. And I'll just give you a quick example of a company that I worked at where we actually had, like, for example, a retention team and a whole team of farmers, right? A whole team of account executives. After a while, it was like, who does what, right? And you actually pulled back and you made the CSMs really a strategic partner. Does that mean you're not driving that revenue? No, you're absolutely driving it because you're with that customer every step of the way in their journey. When they hit those milestones, when they actually need something, you're partnering them with a partner that's going to maybe help them take it over the finish line, but they didn't get there on their own. You were absolutely responsible for getting there. So what do I mean? Like a CSM, you really have to be knowledgeable about your product. You have to be willing to advocate for your product. You have to be willing to hear what customers are saying and say, oh, I can connect to where our product can offer you a solution, right? So you're absolutely responsible for revenue, whether you actually have a revenue target or not. And I think as we see progress in this area, we probably are going to see more and more CSMs with revenue targets.
Yeah. No,
do you mind if I quickly touch on this one question on auto renew here in the?
Totally. I was going to throw it at you. So
okay, good. Yeah, well, because we started our journey with auto renew, and I'll tell you off. Auto renew is a tricky thing. Like I think auto renew actually gets you into a little bit of trouble. And I'm not saying it's not right for every business because I don't know your business model, but here's the problem with auto renew, right? You're selling yourself short. If you have an auto renew clause and you just renew your product every 1 year or 3 years, you're essentially not accounting for all the effort and all the product work that you've done to build your product and make it better in that period of time. So by having an auto renew, you are actually undercutting your product. You're probably significantly undercutting all of the actual cost to value that you guys put in as a team. I think this question kind of got into a little bit of, does offering a reduced price often make renewals happen? I think offering value makes renewal happen, right? You really being an expert on your product, sharing with them what it is that you've done in this year to make this product that much more valuable. And even if it's not a big upsell, it doesn't have to be a big number, but I think renewals really is a measure of how valuable is your product in today's dollars. So
yeah, I absolutely agree. And I think Dave, both of our teams have a revenue target that they look to. And I kind of iterate this with my team all the time is like, we sell, but we're selling the value, and we're upsell, like that expansion happens because our customers realize the value of us working with them as well. And so I think that's a great point. It's the value that makes that renewal happen, not necessarily, that discount or whatever it might be, or just the fact that it's on auto renew as well. Parul, you have another question here that says it's for you. We can hold it to the end so we can get Dave in the mix and hear his take on this, and then we can open it up for kind of more of a.
Let's do that. I think we should. Yeah.
Dave with the fashionable red glasses is one of the questions
awesome.
here has.
Yeah. I love that comment, by the way. Red glasses army all the way. Hey, everyone. I'm Dave Epperly. I'm the manager of customer success operations at Red Canary. We are a security operations company, so I feel right at home here. I work in RevOps, and that's going to color everything that I say during this conversation. But rest at heart, if you think I'm coming at this from a purely outside of CS perspective. I was the first CSM at Red Canary. I helped to build that customer success team, and I have deep roots over there currently. I do work in RevOps, but I support one VP of customer success, 4 managers, and 18 CSMs across small, medium, and large businesses that we service at Red Canary. So I'd start by saying, like, if you were around this morning, you heard Yuman and subsequently everybody after him mention net revenue retention from the minute we started talking to, you know, up until this point right now. And I think that that's really interesting. I have a few things I want to say about that. And the first thing is that I 100% agree. But I also think that, like, maybe we're a little bit further along the acceptance of that as a valued metric than maybe a lot of people realize. What I think is going to happen over the next year or so is that every customer success organization is either going to start to really evaluate themselves versus net revenue retention, or at least want to do that based on what they see from where the industry is going. Now, I know that when big changes happen like that, rifts are going to occur. And to all my fellow Red Canaries who are on here watching, they understand how hard it is for me to say this. But the temptation when we want to change is to sort of take it in and build it ourselves and do what we think is best. But I really believe, after having gone through this myself, that there's a tried and true model that we can all follow that's going to save us a lot of grief as we make this transition. And it's to look exactly next door to our sales teams and look and see what they've been doing for the last 100 years and implement and copy that where possible. Don't reinvent the wheel, in short. I also think that there's a really, really good way that you can start doing this, and that is through a simple forecast. Forecasting your renewals for a quarter, for a month, depending on whatever your business cycle is going to give you a lot of credibility with everybody within your company, from your managers all the way up to the board. Because guess what? You're going to get good at hitting that target. And we can cheat because we have a lot more data available to us than the sales team does as well. So you're going to get really good at it really quickly. It's going to give you credibility and allow you to do more things like take on upsells and expansions, which is where we really start to cook, as Parul and Matt have already mentioned, when we start to talk about being a profit center. The bonus to all this is that your CSMs themselves are going to level up with their careers. They're going to learn more about SaaS business or business in general. They're going to be better allies to their customers as a consequence. And then those selling conversations don't sound like selling conversations because they understand how the business works. And the value, as Parul mentioned, comes really naturally when you start to talk about that. So many of you guys have heard, like, over the years that that your teams need to be getting closer to the sales team. You need to integrate the sales team and the things that they do into your processes. And I just want to throw this up here just to say that we're probably closer to sales than we actually think we are. We all do a lot of the things similarly, although we may call them different things or have different names for them. So I've started broad here and try to neck it down to sort of give you some examples of each of those. So the first one is growing by being fundamentally sound and leading by example. Both CS and sales teams, they forecast. We're going to talk more about that here in a minute. But getting to a point where you can make a forecast, make a call at the beginning of a period, and then hit that target at the end is really foundational to gaining trust across your organization and building confidence in what you can do as an organization. We both have common playbooks. Sales has sales playbooks and CSM have CSM playbooks. And we also practice things like swarming, where we have incidents where a customer is risky or a prospect may be starting to go out the door. We bring in everybody who's necessary to account for that risk and to help turn that thing around. Further down, this is a really terrible analogy. I wish someone would DM me and try to help me fix this one, but I think it's actually quite accurate. I think of customer success managers as precision-guided weapons. They're incredibly expensive. It takes a lot of intel and a lot of input to get them on target to do what they need to do. But when you do that, they're incredibly effective at doing that job. Traditionally, companies who are just starting out, for good reasons, tend to just hire more at them and throw more bodies at a problem. And as you start to mature, then we start to turn the corner on that, do things like customer success operations and specializations that help people be more of the precision guided realm. But the analogy extends to the sales teams as well. Also, growing as CSMs as professionals. Too often, we try to take these motions and isolate the actual CSM or salesperson from the thing that's happening. We have a great sales leader here at Red Canary who says the truth is in the field, and we really have believed that, taken that to heart over the last couple of years, and I think that that's super important for both of those teams. Lastly, commonality between these two teams is when they're good, they both practice continuous improvement. You see it on the sales side in deal reviews. You see it on the CS side in risk reviews and churn retrospectives. All of those things are commonalities that we share. So I guess I would make the case that we're much closer than we think we are in many cases, and making the leap to doing things that are quote unquote more salesy may not be such a big jump as you might think it is. The last little piece that I have here is to slow down to speed up. Getting these fundamentals right in the right place are going to set you up to accelerate in the long term and do really, really important things on the revenue side. Now, I mentioned all of this just to get to the point where I think that I wanted to start, which is a forecast can get you there really, really quickly. And it can start very, very simply. So quick story time. About 10 months ago at Red Canary, we had what we perceived to be a churn problem. And fortunately for us, right about that time, a new CRO came into our organization. And one of the first moves that our CRO made was to bring in the customer success team to the weekly forecast call for the sales team and the marketing team. Immediately, that changed our perspective in terms of what we were doing on a day-to-day basis to be able to participate and to know what we were talking about during that call. And the end result was something that I've been getting to all along, which is we're now a trusted member of the leadership organization. We are clearly a profit center within our organization, and more good stuff is coming our way in terms of responsibilities to upsell, responsibilities to expand, and ultimately trust. So in order to get a forecast right, you got to do a lot of little things fundamentally correct. And I start down on the precision side with data integrity. There are certain things that you're going to have to know, like annual recurring revenue, and you're going to all have to agree what that number is across the business in order to make a forecast. And it is surprising, many people probably are not surprised by this, about how many companies just don't have that kind of data integrity across the organization. You'll have to get there, and you'll have to get there quick in order to make a forecast. But you don't have to have it perfect from day one. As you start to delve into the week over week numbers, what you'll notice is if you don't have it right, it will be very, very clear. In order to forecast, you have to document all of your processes very quickly. We talked about customer journey earlier, incredibly important in order to forecast correctly. So you have to get these big pieces right. I would be remiss if I didn't mention enablement. Sales team has had it for 25 to 50 years. You will see CS enablement become a very strong thing in the next couple of years because of the movements that we've already spoken about earlier. As we step up our game to the process side, alignment across the business is critically important. We've talked about all the motions that we utilize that need to be aligned, but also teaming and across things like the sales team and the CS team. One of the things that we're doing internally is trying to align our CSMs gradually to regions that match our sales territories, which is important because now we're very familiar with the customers that are in those buckets, and we can swarm and we can have a pack mentality, as we like to call it inside, versus those renewals, but also the upsells. It makes all of that communication so much easier, and it really allows us to be fluid as we go after those targets. Establishing routines at every level is critically important. If we're forecasting at a leadership level, we need to have a one-on-one forecast with an individual CSM's book of business back up to their manager in order to make that happen. We have to practice and adopt a retrospective mentality. I spoke about that earlier. If we do all of that right, we get to be predictable. We can start with renewals, and we can move on to everything else. Again, it's about gaining trust, and it's really impressive, trust me, when you call a number at the beginning of a quarter and you get really close to that number at the end of the quarter, even if it's just renewals, quote unquote. And again, I'll say it, the secret is that we have so much data and so much relationship credit to build on to make that forecast that we're kind of cheating when we do it. Hitting those targets is impressive. Consistency in your business and consistency in those forecasts will generate additional opportunities. This team is amazing at hitting their goals, let's try to give them some upsell goals to see if they can, what they can do with that. And you can gradually turn the faucet on there as well. And the last point I will say there is, after a few months of doing this, myself and my VP of customer success got labeled the Boring Brothers for our continued forecasting. And I think that that is actually where you want to be. That is the badge of honor for you as a customer success organization, because surprises are your worst enemy when it comes to churn. And if you can call your renewals well, you can do great forecasting for upsells and expansions. So that's my 2 cents.
I love the boring is your badge of honor. I think that's incredibly true. There's obviously predictable revenue is definitely a thing that is striven for, and I think it's you can do that on the sales side, but once you're able to replicate that on the CS team as well, there becomes again it levels you up that much more. One of the things I wanted to dig in there though is you mentioned around, you feel like you get kind of that upper hand because you can cheat, you have more data to build out this forecast. So if like somebody's just starting and they're looking at, all the way down to that precision piece, like the data integrity and stuff like those items there, like how are you cheating? How are you cheating so you can start this fundamental forecast that you're talking about here?
Yeah, so again, like CS Ops perspective here, which is also kind of having a moment across CS right now. People often refer to Salesforce as the king of CS Ops, going back a couple of years, and they talk about how detailed and how sophisticated it was. But when we first started, we didn't have churn zero back then, almost 4-year customer at this point, and so we have a lot of this data. But to begin with, we used what assets we had in our best resource, which was the CSMs themselves. We started with a simple Google form and a CSM filling out that Google form whenever they met with the customer. We collected that data and we could extrapolate based on a mini forecast. How do you think this relationship is doing? We could extrapolate that across the customer relationship over time. And what we lacked in tooling and lacked in hardcore data, we made up for in people power, just like I described earlier. So you don't have to be sophisticated. You don't have to have every single piece of data known to man. You have to have great individuals that can put in a little bit of work in order to get you, a foothold, which can often justify other maneuvers and other things that you might want to do over time. Does that make sense?
Right. Yeah, I completely agree. And they're already customers, you have kind of the ability to ask them those real questions that you might not be able to on the other side of the funnel either.
Yeah.
So
to this day,
conversations.
To this day, with all of the data and tooling that we do have, one of the most reliable predictors of unhappy customers or of churn is just asking the CSM what their gut feel is. And I know that's kind of counter to a lot of what ops is all about, but that's a heck of a good indicator right there to me.
CSM sentiment, it's a real thing. Parul, back to you. You've got a question that's pointed directly at you in the chat. So I want to throw this one to you. You can read it out. It's a little bit of a lengthier one, but has a couple different questions in it. So I'll let you go ahead.
Definitely. So the question for everyone is, I'm going to totally paraphrase it, but what is a typical ratio for sales to CSM or other kind of CS function? And the goal of the organization is to build a customer-centric CS department from scratch. So where do you even begin? And I think that's a really tough question. I have not ever really thought of it in the salespeople to CSM context of a ratio. I typically think of it as a customer to CSM ratio, and I'll take one step back because it really does depend on your product. Like, what is your product, right? So does your product have a 9-month consultative sales cycle? And then you're probably going to be, okay with, you don't have like the super high volume of sales maybe, or is your product something that is turned around pretty quickly? Generally speaking, I think what you see is sales organizations tend to be larger in a company because of a lot of different efforts that might be going on, such as business development and whatnot, and not only that sort of new hunting and new selling capacity. Your CS team really should be a reflection of what your customer needs are, right? So if you have customers with various touch strategies or customers that fall into different segments, you can design your CS team to meet the needs of those segments. And your ratios are really then based on either the ARR targets or the work being done. So happy to dive into this question more in like a email message or something back to people. I know we've got a bunch of questions in the chat too. I'm not sure if we'll have time to get to many, but it would be great to reloop with people as much as we can.
Yeah, and I was just going to actually throw to our CS ops expert if he's got an opinion on and weigh in on that question as well around, you know, accounts or reps to CSMs.
Yeah, this is too easy. It's as many as you can. You give them as many accounts as they can possibly handle, and then you go from there. I think it goes back to some of the talks that we heard earlier. I agree with everything, by the way, but if you have the right kind of goals set out within your customer journey, you know what success means for your customers, and you can measure that. I think you can directly correlate to how much work it takes to hit those goals on the CSM side and on the sales side in order to correlate that to the kind of staffing and number of headcount that you need to fulfill that role. Yeah. That's easier.
Can you actually, but can you actually expand on that just slightly? Because we had another question from somebody that said, I'm a little worried because I don't have like renewals. Is that going to set me back? But I think what you're saying is you as a CSM could have several responsibilities. You could be responsible for onboarding. That could be a big chunk of your time that actually could contribute to quite a bit of learning and other responsibility that maybe you wouldn't have responsibility for other things. And that's going to also help define a ratio. Sorry, I'm extending this question into another one because I just felt like that was a little resonating with me.
Yeah, I think that's a great call out. I think that in those kind of situations, you're always going to benefit your business, your customer, and yourself individually by understanding more about how everything works. And once you determine, did we just get kicked off?
No, we're good.
Okay, cool. Once you determine that that my role may appear to be small, but contributes in X, Y, and Z way across the business, and then you can back out that direct correlation as well. Like we all know, for example, you mentioned onboarding. We all know time to value is incredibly important when it comes to churn rate. Study after study, if you don't get to time to value very, very quickly, you're likely to go out the back door, even if it's a year later. So that onboarding is critically important. The role that the CSM plays in that is therefore critically important to gross retention, which is also critically important to everything else that we've been talking about today. So I think it's about like just leveling yourself up and learning about the way that business works in your individual business, and then how you contribute to that bottom line.
Yeah. And on that note, there's another question here, and we'll take maybe one or two more and then wrap so people can get back on other days. But it's kind of a age-old question, is how do we ensure there's a proper handoff between sales and CS? And you know, we see it time and again, is often sales stays involved in the post-sale and confuses the customer from both point of contact standpoint, and then who handles the upsell? Where is the customer going afterwards, right? And so I think that's probably an iterative process where you have kind of, you know, different ways to do this. I think kind of there is a way to do that smooth transition and streamlining the communications, as well as like, this is something that we try to ingrain so much is, you know, the point of having sales setting that expectation pre-sale, and then the CS team being aligned with them. So that way they're still communicating the exact same message. I think that's probably the key there around developing that relationship. And, you know, Dave said it earlier, is having kind of that communication back and forth, the two teams on the same page. You mentioned you had kind of the teams aligned almost identically. That's what we do as well. We join each other's meetings. We get very predictive in terms of our forecasting, and we add to each other's all along as well. So it's the approach that we've taken. I don't know if anybody else wants to weigh in on that, but I think that's kind of an age-old question around how do you make it a smooth pass off to the customers getting to value faster?
I think you're spot on by calling out setting the right expectations, and it's for the right expectations internally, but also externally. One of the things that we learned was that customers don't necessarily, even though we think they might, expect to have the same person as their CSM for the entire duration of their time with your company. I just listened to a great talk by Client Success. This Pej was talking the other day about Profit Center and CSMs. They did this, I think it was like a year-long study, this in-depth dive into that very question. And what they found completely floored them. Basically, like, no one really expects that CSM to stick around. So it's about messaging up front and saying, we're going to get you the exact right answer at the right time. It may not be from the specific person that we call out today. Right. But setting the expectations, again, is the exact right thing to do.
Right. No, I think you're spot on that. We've already gone 5 minutes over, and I think we all already knew that was going to probably happen. And there's a ton more questions in there, and I kind of feel guilty for not answering them all. But I want to be respectful of everybody's time. I'm going to offer this on Dave, on Parul, on behalf of yourselves as well. Is if you guys have questions or want to just connect on LinkedIn, feel free to search us up and find us. I'm totally okay with that. And I've offered up Dave and Parul, so now they're okay with it as well.
Very much.
But we really love doing these types of
Absolutely.
things and chatting about it. So thank you to Churn Zero and the Big Rig organizing committee for putting this all together. I think this is doing these types of events is incredibly important to our trade. So thank you so much. And Dave, Parul, it's been a pleasure.
Same here.
Thanks so much.